Welcome back. We're in Alaska. It's winter, and today we're going to be reviewing the Canon R1.
I'm Nick Boris. I'm a wildlife photographer and filmmaker in Alaska, capturing the raw beauty of the last frontier, from grizzlies to the northern lights. If you love wildlife and adventure, step into the wild and subscribe for a front row seat into nature's untamed world.
So I'm out here looking for great gray owls on the Kenai Peninsula, and this morning in this very spot I actually did have a great gray owl that was hanging out with me for about three and a half hours. So I'm hoping that that same owl comes out of the woods somewhere over here. But until that happens, we are going to film this review video. So let's get into it. I'm gonna go over about 10 different categories of the R1, and these are in no particular order. I'm just gonna spew them out there. And if you're looking for a more technical video, I'm gonna just say, I'm not gonna read all the specs. You can find the specs online. There's plenty of videos out there that talk about the specs. I'm gonna be talking about my real world experience using this camera in the conditions here in Alaska and what my experience has been so far. The first thing I'm gonna talk about is the price. I'm assuming if you're watching this video, this camera is either in your budget currently, you're looking to buy it, or it's a camera that you're hoping to work up to. If you have an R3 or an R5 or an R5 Mark II, is this camera really worth upgrading to? Now, I shoot with the R3. I'm recording this on the R3. The R3 is my backup camera. And we'll get into why I chose this for wildlife as opposed to the R5. But as far as performance goes, I don't really think that you're gonna be wowed by the performance if you were to compare the R1, the R3, and the R5 or the R5 Mark II. All three of them are very compatible, capable, and powerhouses of cameras. If you're trying to make a decision between which one to get out of those, it's really gonna come down to the small details. So for me, is the price justified? Well, I came from the 1DX Mark II, and I love the 1 series. So I really was waiting for this camera to come out before I upgraded. My 1DX Mark II ended up breaking on me. I bought the R3 as my backup camera and used that for about a month and a half until the R1 came out, and then I purchased the R1. And I've been really happy with both cameras. I like the feel of them. I'm a large man, I'm over 6'4", so having a big camera in my hands that fits is really nice. I felt like the R5 and the R5 Mark II were just a little small. Even with like the battery grips, I just didn't like how it felt in my hands. I think as far as price, the great gray owl just came out. I'm gonna try and do this now while shooting. I was hoping that it would come out. I think as far as price goes, if you're comparing Sony to Nikon to Canon, really any of them are going to be great cameras. I don't think the autofocus in this camera is perfect for wildlife. I think if I were to shoot people or sports or cars, maybe it'd be a little bit better, but this camera does have some autofocus issues, especially like finding wildlife, even with the wildlife setting on. But comparing the three cameras, it's like comparing luxury cars. All of them are gonna get you to point A to point B. It's just a matter of what do you feel most comfortable driving that's gonna get you there. And I'm gonna move a little closer to this owl. I'm perched right up on the tree right here. Definitely zoning in on something. You can see its talent sticking out of the tree. That's so cool. I'm gonna try and get around it. Still trying to get that in-flight shot.
Unfortunately, the majority of my in-flight shots were blurry. And the photos that weren't blurry, I just didn't have the owl completely in frame. But with this owl being so active, I was actually able to get another chance at capturing some in-flight shots.
I think now is as good a time as any to talk about its autofocus. This might sound counter to what you would believe, but owls are pretty contrasty. This great gray owl has bright yellow eyes, has white patches underneath its chin, and it's against a green backdrop and perched on green trees. Yet, the autofocus sometimes still has trouble finding the subject. And for example, I'll record a video, and let's see. So I have it set to servo, and it's sitting right there, and you can see how long it takes before it actually focuses on the owl, you know. And I'm using RF glass. I have a full battery. Everything should be good to go. Like, there's no reason really for it to be that slow. But with this lens, I find it needs to feed quite a bit. Now, I will say 28 to 105 2.8 that I'm using to film myself seems to be a little bit faster of a lens. It doesn't struggle focusing, so it might just be the 100 to 500. As far as the eye autofocus goes, it's actually pretty good. I'd say for animals with black eyes and that are of a dark complexion, it struggles a bit, but it actually is pretty good. It does a good job even with this great gray. Even if I come down, I'll refocus, come back up, and it's right on the eye. When it comes to shooting owls, which is something that I spend most of my time doing, it's a necessity, especially when you're trying to get these in-flight shots. Having autofocus that is going to bounce to the eye, and as they fly towards you, you want that autofocus, that servo, to be on the eye, adjusting as you're shooting. And I find that it does a pretty good job tracking the animal, especially a high contrast eye like an owl's, while it's flying towards you or even parallel to you. Now, when it comes to using autofocus in low light, I think that speaks a lot about this camera. I got it over the R5 because of its low light capabilities. Wildlife, you're mostly shooting in low light, poor light conditions. Here in Alaska, you know, it's almost like the Pacific Northwest. We get a lot of cloudy days, a lot of rain, a lot of snow, and in the wintertime, you only get so much light throughout the day. So a lot of times you're shooting wildlife in poor light conditions. So bumping up your ISO, I haven't really gone above 20,000, but we definitely got some in-flight shots as it flew right to us. My buddy Harry put out a video with his review, and he had, I think, a shot at 32,000 ISO, and I'm gonna reposition now, get back so I can continue to record this owl. And the moon is actually sitting right behind the owl right now, so I'm gonna try and get in position to photograph that. I got the R1 because of its low light capabilities. That was the primary purpose, was because you're generally shooting at poor times of the day. And I'm a little out of breath from running around. I've shot the Northern Lights, I've shot the Milky Way, I've shot at 20,000 ISO. Could even have shot more than that. I know I have some pictures where I really tested the ISO the first time I was here. I've shot with the R3, I've shot with the R5, the R, the 1DX Mark II, and now the R1. And I'd say you'd really have to pixel peep to notice a large difference between the R3 and the R1. I noticed for astrophotography, when it comes to the R5, it's way worse. The noise is pretty atrocious, and when I printed out those photos, I did not like them. And I was even printing them 8x10. When it comes to noise level, stacking photos, I really got to give it to these 24 megapixel cameras. The smaller megapixels, the better they are in low light. If you shoot in low light, go with a lower megapixel camera. these 45 plus megapixel cameras, in my opinion, are just overrated. Fight me in the comments about it, but I love these cameras, and I obviously chose an R3 and an R1 over the R5. I was gonna move, but then he flew from over here to this side of the fence. So I'm gonna stay right here, and we can go into lenses from the same spot. Now you'll just have the owl in frame. Now when it comes to like sharpness and stuff like that, again, I'm using the 100 to 500, and I have the 28 to 105. Those are pretty much my primary lenses. I am looking at getting the 400 2.8 later on this year, so I'll be able to test that out and report back. But as far as sharpness, I mean, I think the photos speak for themselves. When I first tested out the R5 and the R, the camera actually, well, my buddies actually pointed out to me that they looked super digitized, and I agreed with them. And that was even with testing this camera, or this lens, with those cameras. So I think the best thing that we can do is try and get away from that over digitized look. And that's what I really liked about still sticking with the DSLR. But I gotta say, I was worried about it with the R3, I was worried about it with the R1, and I haven't noticed it in either camera. But if you're looking for a good overall versatile wildlife photography lens, I'd say the 100 to 500 does a great job. I hate the 7.1, f-stop. It really hurts in low light conditions. But again, pairing it with a camera that can actually handle those low light capabilities and handle high noise, it's a great matchup. All right, we're on the move again. Our owl friend was sitting up on the tree, and I was really hoping it would stay there long enough to get the mountains in the background. I've been really trying to get a photo with nice lighting where you have either the moon or the mountains in the backdrop, and to really provide some depth. And oh, he just got something. Hold on. He just dove back down into the grass. I have a feeling he's gonna come back up, but they really like perching on this this fence here. What I need to do is take this backpack off and swap batteries. There we go. So, speaking of batteries, oh, here he comes. So I've had one battery in. This is the first time I've changed batteries. I got here about 10:30, 11 o'clock. My camera was on right away because the second I pulled up, the owl was sitting on the side of the road catching voles. My camera has been on. I've been shooting 4K, 120 frames per second. I've been 40 frame per second photo. I do keep my LCD screen closed on the back about 95% of the time to help save battery. And I have a lot of other, like noise reduction and all that kind of turned off to save battery. But the camera hasn't really overheated up here in Alaska. I did have overheating issues filming whales out in Hawaii. I couldn't film more than a minute, and it never overheated and shut off. But when you're trying to capture that one moment, that one split second, the breach or whatever it is you're trying to capture, sitting there watching that meter and going back and forth, it's a big distraction. So even with the fan of the camera, sitting in shade, trying to position myself so that the camera was in direct sunlight. But other than that, the battery life of the camera is great. It looks like he's about to fly, so let's go watch him, and we'll move on to the next topic. Let's talk durability and weather sealings. Well, it's a Pro Series camera. It's their flagship. I've dropped it already. Still works fine. Took it like a champ. I've shot in the rain. I've shot in the snow. I've shot in the heat. I've shot in the cold. I have no issues. I mean, I never had an issue with even the 1DX Mark II. That camera took a crap ton of beatings. And even my girlfriend opened up the car door and my camera went rolling out, landed on the lens, and the lens still works, which would have been a bummer because that would have been my second lens, but the lens works, the camera works, no connectivity issues, nothing like that. Very durable, very pleased with the camera. I needed to take my backpack off, and that SD card got full. But anyways, when it comes to like dynamic range and image quality, I think these photos kind of speak for themselves. But it's their flagship camera. It's a pro camera. It's gonna handle great in high contrast scenarios, high dynamic range scenarios, snow, astro, low light. I mean, again, can't repeat this stuff really anymore. But if you're looking for a camera that's gonna do well in, you know, very bright days and very dark weather, overcast days, then this is a great camera to take a look at. But so is the R3, the R5, really any of the Canon's mirrorless cameras, or, you know, like I said, it's whatever car you like to drive. It's still gonna get you from point A to point B. And if you're somebody who shoots underexposed by a stop or overexposed by a stop, I've shot with this camera 2 stops underexposed, 2 stops overexposed, and the detail, you could still recover a lot of detail. And I'll put up 2 photos that specifically I shot today to show you that were shot at 2 stops down and 2 stops up, and show you the before and afters.
This first photo was shot 2 stops to the right, and you can see it's pretty well overblown. But with some Lightroom adjustments and Lightroom denoise, the photo looks great. Comparatively, this photo was shot 2 stops to the left, and with the same Lightroom adjustments, this photo turned out just as well. Now as we sit and wait for our owl friend to come back, hopefully he does. And I was hoping we'd get some color, but the sun has now dropped behind some clouds, and the mountains on this side over here are all lit up real nicely. I don't have auto exposure on, so you probably couldn't even see that. I want to talk about buffering now. When it comes to, I've only run into issues once, and that was actually today, not even shooting the owl, but shooting an eagle. I wanted to get the nictating membrane, had the shutter down probably for, I don't know, 20 or 30 seconds, and then I realized that it was buffering. Otherwise, in these high burst scenarios, flight shots, you know, them fighting, things like that, I haven't noticed any issues with when it comes to buffering. I'm able to shoot everything and then swap to video fast enough to still get action. Very few times have I had buffering issues going from either recording something to photo or shooting photos and going to video. I haven't missed enough scenes due to buffering that caused me any grief. A lot of the times I feel like it's my own impatience that is causing me to lose the scene, and not something I would blame the camera for. Now, I already touched on this topic too a little bit, but the ergonomics and how the camera feels. Again, I got big hands. The camera fits real nice in my hands, so I couldn't be more happy with that. As far as button placement goes, I like it again because the 1DX layout compared to this is fairly similar. The R3 is almost nearly identical, but they did end up moving the on-off lock button. You have to flip it a different way now. I think they rotate it by like 45 degrees. It's a little annoying because you have to like relearn muscle memory, but I actually like it a lot better. And then the rate button and the trash button are a little bit different spots. All in all, the ergonomics of the camera and the way that it feels in your hand is really nice. So I got no complaints. However, on the R3, the eyepiece breaks way too easy. Mine broke week 1. Like, let's fix that, Canon. And the final thing I'll talk about are the video capabilities. Now, one of the big reasons I got this camera was the 4K 120 frames, a true 120 frame per second video camera. For me, that's been huge. I shoot video more than I shoot photo. I shoot in 4K. I don't really see a purpose to shoot in 8K. I don't have clients that request it. If I did, I'm sure I would test that out. I know it also can shoot log, so having that dynamic range and that ability to color correct stuff in log, especially when things that I'm working on are documentary related, it's important to have as much control over your footage as possible. So I do
Really appreciate that. And another really big thing that is new to the R1 is audio recording. A lot of my footage, I have to adding sound in post-production, and I'm doing the sound design myself. The 1080p 240 frames per second, I don't really use it that much. Maybe for YouTube videos, that's something that I will use for its 1080 use. But when it comes to social media, you can really see the degradation of quality when you need to upscale it. And especially like I'll use Topaz Upscale in their video AI, and I'll upscale it like 2K and clean it up and use their denoise, and it's just not that great. If you decide to go watch Harry Collins' video on it, you know, he talks about some issues he had with his, and I'm not gonna really go into it. You could watch his video for that and go like and subscribe his stuff. The issues he experienced, I did not have. Only thing I sort of had was the buffering between video and photo when you just got done taking video footage, or if you just got done taking photos and you're switching to video. And the last thing that I really love about mirrorless cameras and these Pro series cameras, shooting the 1DX Mark II and the lenses that I had, even with lens stabilization, your footage is so shaky. It is so much easier and more efficient to just sit here and follow your subject around like this. I am so much more responsive because I have nothing holding me down. With the in-body stabilization and the lens stabilization, there is a little bit of shake. It's not perfect. Like, it shouldn't look like it's on a tripod. And I think especially with wildlife and action shots, it's nice to have some movement in the frame. The camera's so light, I could sit here and shoot with one hand, and the buttons are all where they need to be. So I can literally use my thumb, and I have the camera set up to just use these two fingers and be able to do anything I need to, swap to anything I need to. And I've been shooting all day, and this isn't exhausting. Like, I could sit here for a while just waiting for the subject to do what I'm hoping it does. Well, that's it, everybody. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. You took something positive away from this, or maybe this helped you push you to finally getting a Canon R1, or at least get your hands on the camera system that is gonna work the best for you. If you have any questions, leave a comment in the comment section below. You can follow me on Instagram and leave a comment on any of my photos, or shoot me a DM there, and I'll do my best to get back out to you. But for now, I'm gonna focus on the last bit of light and this owl, and happy shooting.